No.
If you have this, what are you going to hook it to?
D-ring.
You need a D-ring or a shackle, either soft one. We'll go over all these things specifically in a little bit, but always have this stuff within reach. Those two things are the primary things you have to keep within reach. Now you can use your winch. Whether it's hooking it over a hook, hooking it into somebody else's D-ring on their bumper, hooking around a tree, whatever you've got to do, you got to have something to start with. All right, now I'll get back on track. Everybody here, unless there's some vehicle I don't know about, has an electric winch. They do have hydraulic driven winches. You see those on Hummers, real Hummers, not HC2s and 3s and stuff. The big Hummers, you'll find a hydraulic winch on those quite often. But for our purposes, we're going to just stick with electric because that's what everybody here's got. The parts of the winch, of course, we just talked about the controller, the piece you need to know the most about, right here. You've got, opposite the electric motor, you have a gearbox, and we have some sort of a freewheel lever. Lots of different configurations, but they all do the same thing. When it's in freewheel, it does just that. It freewheels. You can just pull the cable out. Inside of that gearbox is not only that clutch that releases those gears, but there's what they call planetary gears, which is, because of the name planetary, you can assume it's got gears that are revolving around a center gear, which is on the end of this electric motor that drives that. A lot of detail you probably don't need to know about, but that's how they work. Opposite the gears is the electric motor. Not much you need to know about that, except that if you ever see it smoking or it feels really hot, it's time to stop and give it a break. So remember that about the electric motor. Now, you'll see on some Jeeps or Broncos, quite a few Broncos, I got to start getting my terminology right nowadays, off-road vehicles, you'll see some, these are called the fair lead, where the winch line goes through. You'll see some like this one or that one. Almost everything out here has what's called a Haas fair lead. It's just a smooth aluminum, or some are steel, but those are pretty rare. Usually they're aluminum, and that's just so that this synthetic line won't get abraded or messed up as it's going in and out of the winch. If you see ones with rollers on them, one on each side and one at the top, one at the bottom, that's called a roller fair lead. And those are only designed for steel cables. You cannot run a roller with a synthetic line. It will cut, they'll get caught between the vertical and the horizontal roller, and it'll cut this every time, real quick. So you gotta have a Haas with the synthetic line. Don't very often see a steel line with a Haas fair lead. They do make them in steel, so they do have them. It's generally just a cost thing when you do that. That's usually on an imported winch or something like that, because in reality, they don't last very long. That steel cable is going to wear right through that thing, whether it's steel. If it's aluminum, it'll go right through it in one winching, but if it's steel, it'll go through it pretty quickly too. While we're talking about cables, synthetic, which is this, and most everybody has synthetic, advantages to this is it's super lightweight, super strong. Most of the time, the synthetic, quality synthetic, is stronger than a steel of the same size. The disadvantage to synthetic, there's two of them, two disadvantages. One is it's not friendly with the sun. The sun will eat this up over time. So if you don't keep your Jeep parked inside, it sits outside all the time in the sun. This winch doesn't have much exposure, but there's a lot of winches where the control boxes are off to the side. They can get more exposure to the UV rays. If you do have that situation, it's best to put a cover on it so the UV doesn't get to it. The other disadvantage to this line is you can cut it pretty easily. When I say pretty easily, it takes a little while even with a knife, but if you've got this under extreme tension and it runs over a sharp rock, it can cut it. There is, mine's way back in there. There's a abrasion protection that's usually on most lines, and it just slides over it. It's just a Kevlar type sleeve. Just slide it to any place you're going to go over a rock or a sharp edge. We'll talk a lot more about that later too. Disadvantages to steel is you get little fibers broken in it. Doesn't affect the strength until you get past 10% of the cords or of the wires broken right next to each other. But those things will grab your hand and mess you up in no time. A bollard at the end, you can hook to that, winch your Jeep in on that. If you don't, have your friend park their car, whatever, and winch that in. You don't need to get it super tight. You don't need to be dragging something with the tires skidding. But if you put your parking brake on halfway, just keep some tension on it. And then you have to stand here while you do it, and you level that line by moving it back and forth as you wind it in, with gloves on. Mine are in the door pocket. Another good thing to have within reach of the driver's seat. Mine are in the door. Okay, other winch questions, specifically to the winch itself. The thing I was going to talk about, I talked about this. This is all it takes, by the way, if you have a Warn winch and you want to have wireless remote. These come as a package. It's really convenient. If you use your winch a lot, it's super convenient. Most of us don't use their winches very much. I use mine a lot. All winches are labeled what their pulling capacity is. So it's good to know that. It's good to know what your Jeep weighs. This particular winch is a Xeon. It's a 10S. It's 10,000 pound with synthetic rope. That one is this one's a 12S, 12,000 pound with synthetic rope. That one we haven't pulled out and tensioned up yet, I don't think. So we'll do that. That's true of all winches. Doesn't make a difference in the brand. By the way, I didn't start out with any stories about myself or I don't know anything about winches, but I didn't start out in this business. I actually started out in the heavy commercial towing business. It was a family-owned business. Started in '71. I grew up in that, and we did primarily heavy commercial. Transporting coaches was one of our biggest things. We were one of the first people in the state to have under-reach equipment to haul a big coach. We were hauling all across the country, but we were able to do it in the state of Colorado. That didn't last long. Everybody jumped on board right away. We had to. Now you can grab a tree. Don't have a twist in it. You grab a tree with that. You grab a tree, go as low on the tree as you can get. Because the higher you go, the more leverage you got on tipping that tree over. And these are usually made big because it's nice to find a tree about that size. Okay, well, the first time you use it, so nothing's going to stay in. This hook is rated for the load right in the middle of what's called the throat. So we call this the throat. It's rated for right there. When you do that and you're pulling right here, you've got that much extra leverage trying to break this off. Plus you're dealing with a lot thinner material out here. The same thing happens. You've got this hooked to a shackle here. You're pulling off that direction. That person moves forward just a little bit and the winch line goes slack for a second and then it gets tight. That shackle will end up pulling right here. You've seen a ton of these break. And when they break, they come right back at the winch that's holding onto it. And it's usually in a straight line, but in an arc. It goes like that. Now, if you do have this, one of the most important things to remember about this, that is the correct way to use it, just facing up. Because when this breaks, it's going to go away from the brake. So it should go towards the ground. Have it like this, it's going to go like that. Seen these embedded in windshields? Why can't you do that? Good question. You can do that. If you pull very hard, it's going to be really tough to get that back off the tree. Cinch itself up. You're not supposed to do that. You can. Now, good point though. Another thing to do is wrap something back to itself. 50% of the strength. If you're pulling on this, you're not pulling on two of them. Now these are usually strong enough. I've done it. You can do it. If I had that hook, I probably would do that. It goes in that same slot, but you gotta wiggle it into the slot like that, rotate it like that. It's a lot stronger because you think of the frame rail here and you're pulling this direction. This is pressing on the outside of the frame. This is on the inside of the frame trying to come out. It's stronger than that by a little bit. Way stronger than this. I mean, this is not going to be the failure point ever. It's going to be what you hooked it to. It's going to just tear or rip. But come across the Subaru on the trail, that one would be my recommended one for getting that out. Now Jeeps and everything still have holes in the frame, all designed for these things. There's always one in each corner.
And that's the R hook that you recommend?
The R hook is the one that I would recommend because that's the strongest of all of them. Doesn't mean you can always get that into something. The T hook is definitely number 2, and the J hook, they call this one, is really convenient. You just got a hole in something, you can stick it in there.
How many Subaru owners have bought that from you and have it?
I don't think any Subaru owners have bought this yet. Right there, we've doubled our pulling power versus a straight line. 2 ways of calculating that. They're in the back of this book as well. Somewhere in this book, I don't know if I can find it quickly. But it'll say the easiest way to figure that out is to count the number of lines that are going to get shorter. And we'll talk about why the term shorter is in there. This line and this line are both going to get shorter as we reel it in because that is going to get closer. So this line's getting shorter and that one's going to get shorter. So we have 2 times the pulling power. We can do it again. We won't put it in. With just a regular old round hole that I have in this one. Then you can run a shackle through it this way, obviously we didn't have to miss that. Yeah, that's fine.
I love soft.
We got another soft one. Oh, you know what we did wrong though? I just got it twisted. Good. Enough. Now, we're going to have 3 lines. So we've got 3 times the pulling power. Oh, this is the abrasion protector too, by the way. If we had a big rock sitting here, we'd need 3 of them. We're good.
But you've never looked at their winch.
I've seen it on 4-wheeling videos, and I know why people do it. You get in a hurry, you get hooked up, and you start winching it up, and the guy front says, "Let me just pull forward, and I'll just pull you out." And they do, and they mess up a lot of winches.
Hey Scott,
Yes.
do you attach the flat link to the D-ring, or is it better to use a shackle on that third connection?
The quality winches start at 8,000 pounds when it comes to vehicle applications. They make UTV winches and everything that are a lot smaller. But what if we need to pull Mike's Jeep over there from here?
Pull that from by me.
No, we'd get to Allen and Sherry's realistically from here pretty easily. If that had, let's say this is the trail and they've slid that far off the trail, how would we get that from there back over to here? easiest way is we take that orange Jeep and just back it up a little bit more, and we'll just leave that first snatch block right there. And we'll go there, and we'll go there. Then we've got a line going here and a line going there. How much pull are we going to have for that Jeep?
10 less your wraps.
10's right. It was a 10,000 pound winch. We're only shortening one line because that Jeep hopefully won't move. So the distance from here to there is going to stay the same. The one that's shortening is only one line from here to there. If that's not enough pull, we can always double it. We can go to red Jeep and back to the orange Jeep again, and then we've doubled it because there's going to be 2 lines getting shorter as that comes closer. Or 3, or however many you need to do. I did a pull once with that 160,000 pound winch that I was talking about with 1.25" cable with 10 of these. I have, you don't find a whole lot of them in the Jeep industry. I'm gonna step over this for a second. They're loose, I'm not gonna hurt myself. These things, or a tree protector, work great. Think of that tire sticking up in the air. I can show you pictures of semi-tires that would do this too, where this is pulling so hard that it's almost touching the rim and the rest of the tire is distorted around it. It does not affect the tire at all. And if you've ever watched some of these Jeep tires with really low pressure on them, go over rocks, and you see them distorted completely, you start to realize that can happen on a winch too. The good thing about this is you'll start out pulling it 90 degrees, so you've got to envision that tire this direction. And as it comes over, you'll start pulling, if you're pulling straight on it, it'll be like this. If you get it so far, eventually it'll slip off, but hopefully by then the Jeep's already back down. One of the advantages to that is as it comes back down, it goes through an arc. A lot of times it's getting closer to you, and then all of a sudden it's getting further away from you. When it does that, these have usually fallen off by then, so you're not putting a real big jerk on the Jeep that you're pulling the Jeep away, or putting that shock over the winch. So wrapping around a tire is sometimes a really good way to do that. The thing I was talking about, Rex's thing, it's just got 2 J-hooks that are hooked together on a bridle on the back. If you hook them in a wheel, pull off that thing. Looks pretty good for that as well. If not, look for those holes back here in the frame. Hook those cluster hooks in. These things. Sometimes you'll have something on its side and you're pulling on it, and all it wants to do is slide sideways on its side towards you. Only way to stop that from happening is to somehow elevate the way you're pulling. We had, I forgot what we call them. There were 4x4s with a V cut in one end and a point on the other, and you'd set that on the frame. So the winch line, if this is the Jeep, would come and go up over that log, set it on the log on the frame on a 45, go over it. So when you're pulling, it's trying to push the vehicle down and roll at the same time. You can find, especially now, the trails we've done lately, there's tons of cut logs laying everywhere because they've had so many down trees this year. They're laying everywhere. If we'd have rolled one over on SOB yesterday, we could have walked anywhere and grabbed a tree. But you do lose, in the commercial industry, we considered them 10% per block due to friction, just the friction in the bearing inside of here. These are not super sophisticated like the ones we used to have that had ball bearings. They were greasable. We had to service them all the time. Those probably didn't lose 10%. That was the number we used. These, I could guess, especially if it's rolled around in the back of your Jeep for a couple of years, you might lose more than 10%. But still, you're gaining a whole lot by doing multiplication. Other questions? So you won't feel that Jeep just like bang go with the chain. There's chains, but you will feel it like a rubber band. It'll just start to slow down a little bit. This Jeep will kind of lurch forward because all that kinetic energy is stored up in this. It can't stop that one because it's already moving. It's going to make this one pop forward. These are great. We use these in the heavy industry too. 99.9% of the time it was for spun out, fully operational semis that just couldn't move. And you put a big tow truck on the end of a huge one of these and get it moving, they were unstoppable. I don't care how stuck that, or how spun out that semi was, it was going to follow you at least for 30% of this length. It was going to move it that far. Great, fairly lightweight thing to carry around. They come in rope style like this, and you get them in flat. The problem with flats is they look exactly like these kinds of things. Most recovery kits will have a tree protector plus one of these that's 20 or 30 feet long. These don't have any stretch. They really do. They have 5 to 10% worth of stretch, but they say they don't stretch because compared to that, they don't. This you can use like a chain. This is basically solid. Don't think of this as any stretch. So you've got this wrapped around a tree with a shackle on it. Something breaks. You don't have all that kinetic energy stored up. It's going to fling parts. You got that with something on the end of it. It's like a slingshot. Whatever's hooked at the end of it is going the direction that thing.
Okay, so one weird point that my Jeep's really getting banged is where the shocks connect. I even noticed on yours on the back. Do you recommend those little protectors that you put on the bottom of there?
I generally don't recommend anything that hangs down any farther. If you've got an aluminum bodied shock, which most of ours are, and you're starting to get some pretty serious wear on the bottom of a shock, if you haven't distorted those mounts yet, yeah, you can put a skid plate on them. You'd be amazed how much a 1/4 of an inch hanging down on a shock or even a front diff cover will hang up. You will actually notice it. I don't remember hanging up here before, but it's those little skid plates and things that hang down. So, personal preference. You know, if you're really worried about it, I mean, if you're not sure about it, we can look at it and let you know if it's really an issue or not. The more serious you get about four-wheeling, the more those things get banged up, scratched up, messed up. Rear shocks are one of the worst because they do tend to hang the lowest. They are off to the sides, so you don't hit them as much as you do a diff. But even diff skid plates, I'm not a fan of those. I've run them before, but I've always taken them off. I just didn't like it when hang up on them. I prefer to have a nodular or a heavy forged cover. Let the cover just do its thing. You're never, I suppose anything's possible. I've never seen anybody break the casting of a differential forward. The only time I've ever seen one broken is from parts on the inside coming out through it. They don't get broken by hitting them on the rocks. They get broken by something in the inside breaking and get shoved through it. Always, if anybody...
Oh my gosh. I'm like, ooh.
He did it in like 3 seconds.
We had to